On the other side, you have the Baltic Sea, which is like this big basin that is optimized for preserving these historical wrecks. And then in the middle of it, we have the mines in Sweden, we have the mines in Finland, and then Norway has caves. We have everything.
Off-Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. If you ask Tiffany Norberg where some of the best diving is, she will tell you it's right in her backyard. At a young age, her mother made sure to involve her in water sports, so naturally she would gravitate to the underwater world. She would find herself signing up for her open water course while at school in Sweden. Here, she connected with the local diving community where she progressed into a professional role before stepping back to further pursue technical and wreck diving. Moving from Malaysia to Sweden, moving into closed circuit, secret shipwrecks, Baltic Circle Diving, local diving around Sweden, and much more. Please enjoy. Tiffany, how are you doing this morning?
This afternoon.
Sorry. With the time change, I always get slightly messed up. What time is it over there right now?
It is 4 p.m.
Oh, okay. So I was way off. So I'm making an attempt to try to laugh a little bit less. I've been getting some comments that I laugh too much on the podcast. So excuse me for laughing, and then I will try not to laugh as much.
No, I'll try and be boring for you. So,
well, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to have you on. And actually, what is funny is after, this is for everybody out there, this is round 2. We had a round 1. The technical difficulties didn't let us pursue forward, so we called it. And after the fact, I was like, man, you look really familiar. I feel like I know you. And I've actually seen a presentation that you gave at ADEX in 2022.
All right. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So I'm excited to have you on because I was actually hearing you talk about the Baltic Sea and some of the stuff that you were doing there. I wanted to know more. Sadly, I did not follow up, but I'm excited because now I get to hear more about the things that you're doing, your adventures there. But my first question I wanted to ask you is, tell me how and why you became a scuba diver. Tell me about that first breath. What led to that moment? Was it amazing? Was it terrifying? Was it Tell me all about it.
I don't know how far back you want me to go, but I've always loved water. So I'm half Australian, and my mum, who is the Australian one, she's made it a priority to make sure that her kids can swim and everything like that. And I have an older sister who is, I think she's like 15 or 20 years older than me. And she was a diving instructor. And she used to work on Tioman and places like that. So growing up, I always had her, and I thought, she was pretty cool, and I wanted to do this scuba diving thing. We used to live in Malaysia. We moved back to Sweden when I was 11. So you can probably see that I had a little bit of a hurdle put in front of me, as I didn't see Sweden as somewhere that I was going to go scuba diving. For me, it was like, if I was going to start scuba diving, it would have been, in Malaysia, or it would have been in Australia or somewhere like that. So I didn't pursue it. I didn't do anything about it. But when I started high school, so I went to a boarding school, but as a non-boarder, because it was an English-speaking school in Sweden, because I don't know, moving to Sweden was fine, but I didn't know the language. I thought it was easier for me that when I had the opportunity to go to a school where I'd speak English, that I would do that. Because it's a boarding school, they offer students like organized after-school activities. And we got to sit down one day and, write down on a note what we wanted to do and if we could do it. And there were some kids in there like, oh, we could do diving. And I was like, oh, diving, we could do that. Can we even do that here? So I signed up for my open water course in, I think it was 2004 or something like that. And then it was in autumn, and they would take us to the diving school, and we'd do our diving lessons once a week. And we did the pool session and everything. And I do remember the first confined session where, they did the briefing about all the kit, and we jumped in to this really shallow part, and we got to stick our faces down into the water and take those first breaths. And it was like, yeah, it's definitely positive feelings. And I also remember, the first thing when you kneel down on the bottom and you get to breathe there for a couple of minutes and sort of gather yourself. Oh yeah, I remember that was pretty mind blowing for me, and a really really good, a very positive memory of that. That was kind of it. And then unfortunately, we did our open water dives in a freshwater lake in Sweden called Vättern, and that's the second largest lake in Sweden. So it's a big body of water, and we did our open water dives in like January, March. And it was like 3 degrees in the water. Oh. And if you go back, it's 20 years ago now. If you go back 20 years, the diving schools, even if we were diving in a dry suit, they didn't have dry suits for small people or for small females, for example. So I had a little bit of an oversized dry suit, and the boots were probably like, 5 sizes too big, and I'd shoved, 11 pairs of socks on, and then, to jam these dry suit boots inside a fin and, pull the fin straps. And it was a terrible experience. It was cold. We didn't have the right kit. The dry suit didn't fit. You were swimming along, and then suddenly the whole foot and the boot just, left my foot. So my foot was like, flapping around where the knee of a grown-up man would be. Oh, it was horrible. So yeah, no, I didn't have a great first, open water experience. But the confined stuff was awesome.
So was it just the confined session that left such an impact that made you know that you wanted to keep pursuing it, even though the actual open water part was just not puppies and ice cream?
No, I don't really know. There was a group of friends from school. They were doing the course as well. And, they seemed to be pretty hooked. And I figured that, you know what, I might need to give it a go, because as soon as we, the traditional PADI way, as soon as we'd done the open water course, we were already sold an advanced course.
Yeah, yeah.
And when we did the advanced course, it was a little bit better. And, then we were sold the rescue diver course. And no, honestly, it wasn't until I signed up for my dive master course. I don't know how I even ended up getting that far, but no, but the thing was, the community was great, the people were great, and I think it's the same for most divers. I mean, the diving part, the actual time in the water, is a very, very small part of diving, but the community and the people around, and we had a lot of fun, and that also just kept me going.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely agree, because I actually know people, and I would even say the same for myself. When you start diving, like obviously the diving part is amazing. So I started diving in freshwater. Well, I did my first dive in Thailand, but started my training, my progression in a freshwater lake in Texas. And obviously there's not much to see down there. Some big catfish, it's not great, but I do miss that lake a ton, just because it was easy to get to, but there is such a thriving community there. And once you start making friends, it becomes kind of, like, hey, we're going out Wednesday after work. Let's all meet up, kind of, just blow some steam off of the work week and get in the water, just relax. And then, there was a couple groups that would go out, and then there'd always be a joke like, oh, we show up for the diving, but we really come for, the drinks and the food afterwards, just because everybody would go to a restaurant and have some drinks, eat some food. And it became, it's definitely an amazing thing. Well, just a real quick question. So what brought you to Sweden? I'm assuming family or someone's from there. So your mom's from Australia?
Yeah, so my dad's Swedish.
Oh, okay. How did you transition that? Because that's a pretty big move.
Oh, yeah, and probably I'm not sure this is the correct podcast for it, but no, it was. I mean, you're in Malaysia now, and it was a different life compared to living in Sweden. Being a kid there, in Sweden, you can just take your bike and ride anywhere, and you can go down to the shops yourselves. And when I lived in Malaysia, I didn't go to the shops myself. There was no way I was allowed to,
Yeah,
get
yeah.
on my bike and go. And we had Mrs. Coe used to come with the bus and pick us up early in the morning and take us to school, and it's a completely different life.
No, no, for sure. It's slightly, I guess, similar but opposite. So I was born in the United States, but I was in preschool, kindergarten. I think I was like 5 or 6 years old. And my family moved to Thailand. My mother's from Thailand. So my father had a job opportunity there, and he's like, let's move to Thailand to kind of, bring the family out there. So moved to Thailand. So I have these childhood memories of things in Thailand, but I kind of understand because when you're back home, this was California in the 80s. I mean, it's very different than how it is now. But I just remember like such even at a young age, like being culture shock, kind of like, oh, we're having to shower with buckets of water at 5, 6 years old, instead of being at home or being in California where there's running water, just little things like that. And then ended up moving back to California. And then we did a huge move from California to New Hampshire, which I was a little bit older to be able to understand it and experience a little bit more. And that's even a little bit of a culture shock going from the West Coast to the East Coast in the middle of school. And so I could only imagine how crazy it must have been going from Malaysia to Sweden. It must have just been an absolute culture shock. Had you been there before you actually moved there?
Yeah, we'd come, I think, every year since I was born. We'd come over on during summer to see my grandparents and my dad's family. But we didn't speak the language. We didn't speak Swedish, me and my sister.
Oh, okay.
So we moved. We went to a British school in KL. And when we moved to Sweden, we were stuck in school.
Okay.
Didn't know a single word of Swedish.
Back to the diving. So you started progressing. Was this all with one shop with the same group of people? And like what time frame was it? Was it just kind of like, oh, I'll take a class this year, maybe take a class next year? Or was it kind of like, oh, you got sold the class, so you're immediately going up the food chain, I should say?
I started in 2004, and I think I was with that dive center until like 2007 or something like that. So it was quite a while with the same people, and I guess kind of grew up a little bit there. That's where I did my open water class. That's where I did my instructor. That's where I worked in the shop. That's where I taught my first course. It was a really, really great place, a really good place for me to learn from. Yeah, I became an instructor I think I did my dive masters, I think I did in 2006. So it would have been 3 years or so after I started diving. I did my dive master, and then I did my AI, and then I actually traveled a bit, and then I did my open water instructor. So it might have been, I don't know, if it was like 5 years or so from open water diver to open water instructor. And I was an active diver that entire time. After I graduated high school, I did 6 months. I went to the Philippines, and then I went to Australia to work for a while and to kind of get that experience up.
How did you like the Philippines?
Oh, it was really nice. It was really nice. We were just there for a couple of weeks for a trip. That was like, my first proper tropical diving that I ever did.
Okay.
Yeah, so it took a few years until I actually did anything tropical.
What part of the Philippines?
We went to Malapascua. We went to Donsol. We went with snorkeling with the whale sharks.
Oh.
Which was really cool. And we saw thresher sharks and mantas. So it was, yeah, I mean, I think I was pretty spoilt doing that as my first tropical diving.
Yeah, so I've only been to the Philippines. Well, I've been there twice, and each time I went to Subic Bay. It's really famous for its wrecks. But definitely, it was funny because that's actually the first diving that I did after I moved to Malaysia. I'd been diving around Southeast Asia before, but the first diving I did in Southeast Asia after I moved here in 2022. And I go to Subic Bay, and you hear about the Philippines just being this glorious, magnificent tropical blue in the coral triangle. And I don't know if you've ever been to Subic Bay, but it's the water's green. So it's very well known for its wrecks. But it was just funny because when I got in the water, I'm like, man, I literally feel like I'm back in the lake in Texas right now, just because. But it was a lot of fun, and I had an amazing time there. So to back it up a little bit, I'm just curious because I know a lot of people will make that transition from dive master to instructor. Why did you decide to go the assistant instructor route?
I think basically because I didn't feel ready. I think to be an instructor and to teach other people to dive, you need a little bit more experience. And for me, it just worked really well. That was back when the PADI Dive Master was the big theory chunk. I think today it looks a little bit different. But when I did my dive master, that's when you got your instructor manual, and that's where you had to learn, and you did all the physiology and the physics and all of that already then. I think doing the AI bit and to be able to do a little bit of assisting and staffing as well with different instructors gave me more of an opportunity to gain experience rather than just, hopping from dive master to open water instructor.
Yeah. No, I always feel that it's such a quick jump, and I get it too. Depending on where you are and what shop you're going through. I've seen it a lot where some people will only stay at that dive master level as quick as they can get into the IDC. They're like, oh, okay, I got my dive master card. Let's move forward with our, becoming an instructor. And I do feel that there is a lot lost because I stayed at dive master for about, I think it was a little over a year, but I got my dive guide with SSI. And so I was able to sit in on a lot of classes with different instructors. And then I went and did a dive master intern with Patty. And, so I want to say in all, I was probably in that level for like 2 years. And I felt like there was a lot of knowledge gained just because sitting with different instructors, you can, pick up a lot of different good habits, see the bad habits, see what you want to do, see what you want to avoid. So when did you start kind of progressing into technical?
I would say it was around about 2007, 2008. I did my Paddy Tech Deep, and I started to feel that, I was working at another place then, and it was a little bit more of a technical oriented dive shop, and all of the staff around there and all of the people, they were diving a lot of wrecks, and I also wanted to be a part of that, and I started looking for the tools that I could use to take me there. So I did the Paddy Tech Deep together with a Helitrox ticket, so I could do the deeper stuff. Anything deeper than 30 we did with Trimix. That's just how I was taught. It was a natural path being there with that group of people and at that shop to move toward technical diving and wreck diving.
How did you find that the transition going from, because I know it could be, I know for me it was tough going from, because I'm still very, very early on. I don't regret anything from the past, because I could have progressed. I don't want to say faster, that's not the right word, but I guess I could have pushed my level of progression more, if that makes sense, to where, buoyancy, trim, propulsion. I feel like I have my buoyancy down, but other aspects of it, and I mean, I still need work even today. But how did you find the transition going from the recreational side to the technical side?
I would say I really enjoyed it. I like learning things. I like becoming good at what I do. I think because I gave myself time, I didn't do it straight away. I gave myself that time, and by the time I was a dive master and an open water instructor, I had my buoyancy and everything, all of that control that I needed in the water. It was just, when moving over to the technical side, learning how to dive with a backplate and a wing and the dual first stages and the long hose handling and everything, that was just, it wasn't because I felt that I had enough control. I had a stable platform. I had a very good instructor, and I was given the time as well to be able to learn and to practice and to move forward there.
Okay. Tell me about the progression into the world of closed circuit.
I did the trimix diving on open circuit, and I did a bunch of that, and I got the chance to do a lot of wreck diving, both on the Norwegian coast and in the Baltic Sea. And then I found myself teaching a lot, and I was doing a lot of open water courses and a lot of advanced courses. So basically just teaching recreational courses. And I hit a point where I realized that all my spare time I was teaching, and I didn't get to do any diving for myself anymore. So I decided that I was going to roll back a little bit on the teaching and going back to investing a little bit more into myself and to my diving. And also, I had been diving at that 50-meter level for a couple of years, and I felt that, I was comfortable and it was time to start to progress. And yeah, so then I looked into CCR and eventually signed up for a course and bought a rebreather and
What unit do you dive?
JJ.
Why did you go towards the JJ? I mean, I know all the. I feel like that's a very. I don't want to say popular rebreather, but it's a very utilized rebreather. I feel like across the industry.
I mean, of course, it had to do with a lot of factors. I think one of the big ones is that it is a rebreather that is built and designed for diving in the climate that I dive in a lot. It's a Danish rebreather designed basically by a guy that likes diving in the Baltic Sea. So he created a tool that would fill his needs. I liked the simplicity of it. I found an instructor that I felt had a lot of knowledge on the rebreather and that was also teaching and diving the kind of diving that I wanted to be doing. So I think all of those pieces needed to fall into place, and that's what led to the choice.
I am hopefully. Well, I mean, definitely, I am going to start my rebreather path a little bit later this year. So I stay tuned to follow my journey because it's a little bit nervous going in, but I feel like no matter what the class is, I always have some slight nerves going in. But I just wanted to bring it back a little bit. Tell me about so when you first started progressing from the open water to the advanced. Tell me about the type of diving that you were doing, like what the area is, what's the local stuff that you would go and see. You said it was the second biggest lake or the biggest lake in your area?
Second largest lake in Sweden. It's a huge freshwater lake. It's quite clear, but being such a big freshwater lake, it was also used to transport goods. There are a lot of wrecks. They're quite small because they were used. They had a small little channel to travel through to get into the lake. Small wooden wrecks. They would, of course, had cargo in them, or little fishing boats and stuff like that. And the lake is large and it doesn't have a lot of life in it, and it's really cold. So the wrecks that are a little bit deeper, of course, have been preserved a little bit better, but saying a little bit deeper, I'm talking like 30 meters. So you have these amazing wooden wrecks at like 30 meters that are pretty intact, that you can go and dive and see. I mean, they're small. They're like, I don't know, 15 meters long or something. But they're really nice, and the visibility is often very good. So it's I think a really nice place to start wreck diving as well, to start to appreciate what it is and why they are there without having like a massive cargo ship in front of you going, oh my god, where do I even start?
Yeah. How deep does it get?
The lake,
Yeah.
it's I think it's 128 meters at its deepest spot.
Wow. So it gets pretty deep.
Yep, but I don't think there's anything at 128 to see. It would just be sand and maybe a little crayfish or something.
go do some training dives or something down there.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a. There are easier sites to reach depth at than in the middle of the lake, I think.
I don't know if I had knowledge of it beforehand, but do you know Sarah Banderby?
Yeah.
All right. So when I had a conversation with her, she came on the podcast. She was telling me a lot about the Baltic Sea and the wrecks over there. Basically, kind of saying the same thing, or I guess I don't know if it's this. Is it the same area? I'm horrible, typical American. I'm horrible with my geography, so I apologize. But is there? She was telling me when the Baltic, because of the way that the water is and the comp. Or, now I sound like I know what I'm talking about.
No, but you're on the right track.
Yeah. So is that a destination that you go to quite a bit?
As much as I can, yeah.
Okay. Is it pretty close to the area that you live in?
No, I live on the opposite side of the country, so it's a little bit of a drive to go to the Baltic for me right now.
Okay.
I moved away from my favorite diving in Sweden. I moved as far away as I possibly could.
Why? What prompted the move?
I think because the diving on the west coast is a lot more easy for us to access. We can shore dive anytime. We can shore dive to pretty much any depth we want. Yeah, I think that was basically it. That the availability of diving was the determining factor.
Tell me a little bit about Baltic Circle Diving.
Ah, yeah. So Baltic Circle Diving was a project that me and my husband sort of came up with a couple of years ago. As I said here, like all my diving has been done in this area. And every time, I taught an open water course or I traveled anywhere and people, they didn't see Scandinavia or the cold water areas as a destination to go diving. Everybody was, I want to learn how to go diving so I can go to the Great Barrier Reef or so that I can go to Thailand and it kind of frustrated me, I knew that we had this amazing diving in this area and people were just, they weren't coming to dive here. So I met Ed, so my husband in Australia. I told him that I'm not moving to Australia because I have the best diving in the world where I am. He came to Sweden and we packed my car, which was a mini Clubman with 2 full technical diving kits with scooters and everything. And we drove up the west coast of Norway and we did some wreck dives with a couple of friends of mine. And I think during this trip we found, we were talking about all these places that I wanted to go dive and that, he'd read about and heard about that he would also like to see. And I think the whole thing that just, packing our car and driving and doing these dives and stopping on the way and doing a couple of dives, it was quite inspirational for us to go, oh, maybe we could do this in a larger scale. Maybe we could do this on a holiday, just pack the car and go. So we bought a map, like those big, you go to the bookshop and you buy yourself a big map. And we started by marking all these places in the area that we wanted to go and dive. Famous dive sites for us or areas that I just, never gotten around to going to. And then we started to plan this road trip. We figured that, okay, maybe we can't take the Mini with us. Maybe we needed to go a little bit bigger if we were going to go for a bigger trip. And then, it just kind of snowballed. This, Ed and I going on a road trip became bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think for us, it was also driven that we wanted to show people that anybody can do this. We didn't have any fancy camera equipment or anything like that. We had like a GoPro and a couple of lights and our diving kit. We went and we were gone for 3.5 months. And we had our little YouTube channel and we put out videos to, to try to kind of give people a taste of what it was like in those areas and where to go, who we recommended or to be able to, find a platform and a way to show people how amazing the diving in this area is.
So the places that you knew about and were researching about, was there were you just kind of finding your information on the internet and then going up there and following up? Were you calling ahead? Were you just showing up and seeing, hoping for the best?
No, we definitely had a plan. We after we started, with this map and we looked at it, and then we had a lot of help from friends and a lot of people in the diving community that really, invited us, and we tried to find people that were local divers, because I think that the people that are going to give you the best experience is somebody that really, really loves that diving and knows it. They are going to show you the best of the best. That's kind of what we went for.
So I absolutely hate questions like this, but I'm going to ask you anyways. What were some of the top highlights of the trip? Because I know on a 3-month trip, especially a journey like that, there's probably so many different highlights, but is there any that kind of overshadow them all, or a few?
Oh, that is a really, really hard question. Diving wise, I think some of the diving that really stuck with us was on the Norwegian coast, Saltströmmen. It's a huge, there's a big tidal change in that area. And that was the first time, that I'd ever seen that amount of life in this area. It was absolutely stunning. There were like anemones everywhere, and the wall was completely coloured with, it was covered with stuff, and there were fish everywhere, and that was really, really cool. I would say that was one of the memories, one of the bigger dives. And then, of course, the Baltic. Everything in the Baltic was pretty good.
I started it with, I hate questions like this, because on a whole journey like that, there's so many moments that they're, I don't want to say remember them all, but it's kind of, trying to speak about them after the fact is never as good as the memory is. So that's why I do kind of hate questions like that. But I just, sometimes it's like, oh, this, there might have been something that stood out. But do you think you'll end up trying to do that again, or have you done it again?
No, we need to try and get the time. It takes a lot of time doing something like that and putting everything else kind of on hold. I would love to. I think we learned a lot from doing that trip, and we would definitely, if we were given the chance or the opportunity again, absolutely yes. I would love to do it. Now I'm really regretting that answer that I gave you before, that my memory started going, oh, but we did that. Oh, and we did that. So
Tell me another memory.
we did some absolutely stunning wreck diving in Norway as well. I think it was a whaling boat that they had, you say, commissioned. They'd taken it to turn it into something in the military. It was laying kind of upside down, but a bit on an angle. And there were these... Oh, it was, everything's there because nobody's dived it before and nobody's taken anything. And there were, little egg cups, and there were light bulbs, and then we had these depth charges on a row, like one depth charge after the next depth charge, like this massive row of depth charges, and just the whole dive, everything from the bottom phase to the deco was in this beautiful, where there was a lot of kelp and a lot of fish, and the sun was shining, and, we were mucking around with our scooters, just trying to kill time. And there are so many things like that where it's not just the particular goal of the dive, like the wreck or to see a specific fish, or it's so much about that, like the people you're there with and the circumstances and, the weather that is going to affect the way you feel about. But we did some awesome things. We were in, I don't know if it was in Latvia or Lithuania. They told us that there was this flooded fort that we went to, and we drove our little car into this area that, and they'd warned us, the local divers warned us that this area was, a little bit dodgy, and we had our van that was filled with, everything that we own. We had our rear breathers, our twin sets, our scooters, our cameras, everything. And we parked the van, and we'd been told by this dude that walk this way, turn left here, and you'll find this little like fortress, like this little entrance in this big grass mound. You'll find a little entrance, walk in there, and then there's water, and you can dive there. We did all these really, really cool things.
Okay, okay. So you were saying that the ship, it's just a very well kept because it's not been always. Is it always dived or dove? Whatever. It has a lot of people haven't been diving there. Why is it just
Yeah.
because it's not obviously a body of water? You'd think, because I feel like the local diving community is growing. So when there's a body of water and it's somewhat clear and decent, most people will go and dive there. But have people been diving to some of the areas that you've been since, or is it still just a very isolated place that there's not a lot of communities will come up there?
That wreck is, I think they try and keep it a little bit of a secret.
Oh, how did you hear about it?
Yeah, I have a friend.
It's good to have friends in places.
He actually took us there, so.
Oh, okay, okay. So is it a fairly deep wreck?
No, it was, I think the depth was like 50-ish or something like that.
That's actually, that makes the story even better. Just that the fact that it's kind of off the beaten path, nobody really knows about it. And I was actually speaking to some wreck divers out of the Great Lakes, and I was asking them, is it kind of a hush hush thing when people find a wreck? They only tell like a small select group of people. They don't want a lot of people to find out about it. Is that kind of the way it is over there when people find wrecks?
I think probably there is a little bit of that. I think generally in this area, people have a lot of respect for the wrecks and they don't take stuff off them. I think that's changed quite a lot in the last few years. People are leaving them and preserving them as much as possible so that future generations can see the artifacts and see the wrecks underwater as they were. But yeah, I absolutely think that people are finding wrecks and being a little bit careful with the positions.
Yeah, yeah. So, what would you say is your favorite wreck to go and dive? Is there one, or are they all kind of up there?
I don't know. There are so many good ones. Oh, that's a really, 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 really difficult question.
So, all right, let me change it up a little bit. You have a free weekend coming up. I don't want to say unlimited budget, but you got a free weekend. You got the car. It's gassed up. All the gear's ready to go. What would be the first one to come to mind?
Can I bring a boat?
Yeah.
Oh, you can't. There are so many of them. I don't think I have, one that I think is better than any others. We did a wreck this summer and it had gun after gun after gun after gun on it. That was pretty amazing.
Well, let me ask you this, because I have done a little bit. I've done an advanced rec course. I would like to do more at some point in the future. And I know that there's always different reasons behind why people are gravitated towards recs. So, what is appealing about rec diving to you?
I think it is that I get to see and to experience something that not everybody can. Not in that sounded really, egotistical of me, but
No, 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 no. But because it is true.
I like, specific wrecks. I like wrecks that have a history. I find that really interesting, the history, why they're there, and the story behind the wreck. And that, for me, that's why I want to go and I want to be able to dive them and to experience them and see them there, because I feel very lucky to be able to do that. To be able to visit a museum, where nobody's gone and tampered with anything. Everything is like, it's a little bit like a time capsule, some of these wrecks where they have been lost. A lot of people, when it comes to war, a lot of people have lost their lives and suddenly they're there and nobody's seen them for so many years and they're just waiting there to be found and for the story about that wreck to be shared. And I think that for me is very interesting.
Were you a big fan of history classes growing up? Because I know a lot of
No,
people.
not at
Oh,
all.
really? Okay. Because I always find that a lot of people have that in common. Like, they're either really big into history or they have like a military background, and maybe they served on some ships. So to be able to go and see that, I mean, that's definitely a true statement though, because unless you're a diver, you can't go and experience this wreck underneath the water. I mean, I know some places will offer submarine rides to wrecks. So the historical side of it, I could completely agree with that, just because the stories behind it. And I think it's actually cool when I get to hear stories of someone who actually served on a ship and then, for some reason or another it sank, and then now they get to go diving and kind of relive those memories as they're having this like magical experience in the water, and they're like, oh, I had this memory of being here with so and so or whatnot. So no, it's definitely really appealing. And then plus there's just something kind of eerie depending on the visibility when you get down there, and it's just kind of mysterious and but no, I could definitely see why people are attracted to wrecks, just because it really does add something. I mean, there's a lot of things in the water that I absolutely love. I always joke around and say that at heart I'm a 10-meter coral reef, blue water. Put me there, I'm pretty happy. But it's nice to experience all the different aspects. Do you have any diving plans coming up?
Yes, yes, I do. I have 2 or 3 weeks in Norway this year, up in northern Norway, in a place called Narvik, where they had the Battle of Narvik. So there are quite a bit of shipwrecks there. And then I have a couple of weeks in the Baltic Sea, where we will be based off Estonia, and we'll be diving some of the wrecks off there, which will be pretty good. I'm excited about that. And then, the weekend diving, the mines.
Okay. No warm water destinations on the books.
No.
Are you a big warm water fan, or do you like the cold water better?
I mean, it's not like you want to be cold, but I think that the diving we have is pretty spectacular here. I mean, if you look at it, if you look on a map, if you look at Sweden, you have the freshwater lakes in the middle, and on one side you have salt water, and then you have the entire Norwegian coast, which is, shipwrecks and big fish and all sorts of, blue water, really good visibility. And then on the other side, you have the Baltic Sea, which is like this big basin that is optimized for preserving these historical wrecks. And then in the middle of it, we have the mines in Sweden, we have the mines in Finland, and then Norway has caves. We have everything, and it's driving distance for me.
Yeah, no, I guess there's not a lot of reason to leave. That does seem pretty amazing. And at some point, I will have to make it up there. I've said this 100 times on the podcast before, but I have not done much cold water diving, and it's something that I would like to incorporate into the mix. But I feel like that'll probably be a slow progression for me, just because one, it is a little bit of a destination to get to, but then two, I gotta travel to the places and then get used to the cold, because I don't want to say I'm not the biggest cold water person or cold weather person. Like you said, nobody likes to be cold, but I feel like if you go in there and you're well prepared with the correct gear, correct equipment, it's probably a really good time.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, that there is so much good equipment out there to help you. And diving in the cold doesn't need to mean that you have to do, 2 degrees for 6 hours. That's not what the diving is here. You can do normal recreational dives in colder water with, 45 minutes, an hour, without, using heating and stuff. I mean, when I say cold water diving, it's everything, up to 13, 14, 15 degrees. I think there isn't the limit for cold water diving something like that, isn't it? Like 15, anything under 15, it counts as cold water. It's a little bit of a gap between, 2 degrees and 15 degrees.
Yeah. I am not sure. That's a good question. I'll need to look into that. So my last question before I let you go, I usually like to end on some sort of advice question. Somebody that wants to plan a big trip like you did, a 3-month excursion to go to a lot of different diving places, what is the best piece of advice that you could give to that person to start that journey?
I think you need to have a kind of a clear idea of where you want to go to not get carried away. One of the things that, that we learnt during this trip was to take it a lot slower, enjoy it a little bit more. I think, we went out and we had a goal that, because we'd chosen all of these places and we had such a set time frame to do it, we didn't allow ourselves any extra time to, stay an extra day or two. It was kind of, we jumped in, we went for a dive, and then we just went after that. To slow down, to enjoy it a little bit more. Absolutely plan it. Plan as much as you can, but give yourself time to do it as well.
Actually, I just thought of another question, so I apologize to hit you with another question. But I feel like these are some, I don't want to say funny answers, but funny answers. On that whole trip, was there one thing that you're absolutely glad you brought, or you wish you had brought this one piece of thing? Like, I always joke around, like some people will bring the little portable phone charger or headphones or just random little things. Is there anything on the whole trip that you would highly advise to definitely bring? One piece of not equipment, but just, something like, make sure you bring the headphones, or, the charger, or don't forget the phone charger, just something random like that.
My scooter? No. I'm really glad I had my scooter with me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go. The scooter.
Yeah. No, I don't think. That was a really difficult question.
It is, and I shouldn't have asked it. I apologize.
Ooh. Make sure you bring enough food with you when you're traveling through Norway, because they have a lot of public holidays that they don't tell you about. All of the shops close, so make sure you bring enough food when you're traveling through Norway. That is Tiff's tip.
Okay. See, that's what I mean. There's always that little bits of information. Malaysia is another place that has a crazy amount of holidays. I don't know if you remember from when you were living here, but there's 3 cultures that live, obviously there's more than 3 cultures, but there's 3 dominant cultures that live here. And when we first moved here, I was absolutely blown away by how many. I felt like every other week there was a holiday, because it's like, oh, there's this holiday for this culture, that holiday for this culture, this holiday. And I absolutely enjoyed it, because who doesn't like a day off, right?
Yeah, I don't remember being off school, but I remember, that we went to, to one neighbour's for Hari Raya, and for the next neighbour for Deepavali, and then we went to Chinese New Year. And I'm so happy that I had that experience as a child, to see and to grow up in a place that had so many different cultures. Yeah, and to have all these positive memories from all of that.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And there's such vibrant, colorful festivals that they have here. So it's like when there's something going on, it's just colorful and bright, and the food is just, I absolutely love it. I gained so much weight since I moved to Malaysia. You'll have to come out and do some warm water diving. There's no diving around my area, but there's, the east coast of peninsular Malaysia. There's the Borneo side. There's quite a bit out here, and I still have a lot more exploring to do.
Yeah, we were in Tiaman a couple of years ago. So.
Oh, you were in Tiaman. How was that?
It was like cruisy diving. It was nice and easy diving. It was very nice.
Do you remember where you stayed?
I don't know. I was just, I just tagged along. Ed planned everything, and I just, it's the best kind of holiday when I don't need to think, when I can just, go along like baggage.
That is the best type of holiday. But I really, really want to thank you for coming on to the podcast today. It was absolutely amazing to have you on and hear about your journey, hear more about the diving that you've done. So thank you very, very much for coming on to the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Offgassing, a scuba podcast.